Here. Great. And I'll just make this a blank HTML file called like links and images. And let me delete everything that's in here. Cool. And look at my style. Agnes brought up a good point last on Tuesday evening when we looked at how to open up certain files certain ways. I want to show us a few tricks here. If you're working, if you prefer to when you click an HTML file for it to automatically open into the text that's there, that's fine. You can keep with this image. If you are like doing a lot of coding with these and you want to make sure that it always opens up, you can go if you right click on it, and it's the same with it's the same with Mac. If you right click, I believe there's an open with. You can change your open with to permanently open. If you say choose another app, you can find the app that you want to open it with. Let's just say I'm doing a lot of coding, so I always want to open my files with VS Code. I can click on this and then hit always open. Always use this to open HTML files. And you'll notice that when I do that, my actual image here changes. So now when I double click on the HTML file, I'll actually open the code of it instead of linking there. That's a small thing on Mac and Windows. If if you're like me and you're lazy, you don't want to right click on it. Now the issue is if you do it this way, when you want to open it back up to your image, you go down to open with and hit I'll use Microsoft Edge. It's easier to do it this way because what you could do is just keep this open and then just refresh it when you're adding code into it. So that's just a little trick I wanted to show folks in case you're kind of tired of right clicking on everything. Let's see here. Excuse me. And what I'll do now is I'm going to go ahead and open up our PowerPoint for our chapter 6. See here. Cool. And this is going to be all about links and images and this concept of relative and path. So I think I saw a few folks, I'll put in the chat, some of us might have already used something with this like // We're going to look into this a bit because sometimes linking, you're going to get unexplained behavior if you don't have your link set up correctly, which can be really frustrating. So we're going to kind of go in depth with that. And we'll start off with this element called A. So A is this element where by itself, it doesn't really do much. So I'll go ahead and open up my code here. I'll put my thing on this side. And if I go ahead in my, sorry, my thing froze. That's not good. Cool. So if I go ahead and just put in my A here, you'll notice it's kind of similar to having a get or a P paragraph tag. I'll change this to P really quick. A little bit different because you'll see up here that the P actually has some padding around it because it's kind of decent for text. And we'll see here that an A element is going to be specific to a href attribute. And so again, our attributes are things that go after our element tag. So we have an element and then an attribute. And the reason we want to use A is that it's a dedicated element for these hrefs. So very basically, to make a href happen, is that after you specify your A tag, you can use this keyword called href. And what this will do, it was contain a URL or URL fragment. And what we could do here now, so let me go to something like here. Okay. This is kind of our home page. And so what we'll do now is that, you know what, I want to go ahead and my href is going to be this URL that I have here. So this could be any URL. And you'll notice that we did this before when we actually had a different HTML file. So I'll do it in two different ways. Now, what happens to the text that's in between our A elements here? Let's see here. Show you guys in. Okay. So again, when we have our piece of text in between these A tags that are here, you'll notice that it automatically kind of defaults to this underscore there. Hey, Joel, welcome. We're just focusing on chapter 6 right now. So it's recorded too, but we're just starting up on links and images, okay? No worries. All good. Cool. Great. So one thing here now is that if I click on this, um, it'll take me to my section there, which is fine. One more thing is that we can also kind of add in this special keyword that we saw on Monday, is that your target, when you click on this, is going to take you to, it's going to overwrite your page. And when I mean overwrite, it's going to take over the page you're on. If you want to make sure that that doesn't happen, you can add this special keyword called target. And this says specify where to display the linked URL. So what's cool about this is that the most basic one that we'll add is underscore blank. And a lot of us might have seen this underscore blank before. What this does is that when I click it, it makes a new tab. So that's a basic one you have. You can also go ahead and actually, if we read the description of target, we can make this thing called an iframe. And an iframe is essentially, you can make a little window pop up in your website, like a small one, or you can do whatever you want. You can make it open a new area as well. And that's essentially what the iframe is as well. Blank again is going to load the URL into a new browsing context, which means a new tab. You can do parent and top. Let's see if we can do actually top. Okay. And this is kind of the default version. Top essentially means that you're loading it over to parent. Okay. And our parent in this scenario is us. Cool. So that's URLs. Basically what the
what does the top means? What does
great.
the
So top is kind of what is defaulted to already. But essentially, if we read, let me try to read it to us again. It's not going to happen. Top means that you're going to load this URL wherever the parent is. And what we mean by parent is our current image, or not image, but our current file. So links and images HTML is my parent right now. So when I say target top, this is telling it when I click this link, load over my parent. And you'll see here that it replaces it. So
okay, so you're just like making sure that it's going to be in the same tab.
Yeah, exactly. So you're making sure this one will overload your parent. You might encounter a scenario where you're in like a div or something, and you can make the div load over. But usually, it's just going to load over this guy there. Okay. It's kind of like being redundant with the default.
Oh, all right. That's what makes me.
Yeah.
Always makes me confuses me when we do stuff that it's already doing.
Yeah. Well, I just want to make sure it gets all the full scope of what's going on. Yep.
Right.
Cool.
Okay.
Nice. So that's our target of top. Let's see here. Nice. Now, a cool thing we could do as well, you'll see this a lot with like websites where even in a PDF that link to us, there's a little arrow that says like download. We can implement this functionality by using this attribute called download. So what we'll do here is when you click on this link now, it will try to download whatever the href is. So let's actually try to do this together. So I'm going to go ahead and say A. Again, I'm going to make a separate attribute. And let's go ahead. Let's see if I can find a download PDF somewhere. Cool. So this is just a simple website. I'll toss it in here. Oops. This is just like a PDF for testing purposes. Nice. And let's go ahead and say now. So what we used to do is we'll say a href. You know what? Go ahead and link this guy here. Say click here. And let me actually add a BR. So a BR is going to be a break line. We had two. Pretty basic, right? We already know that this is what happens when we click on it. So if I go ahead and before I say href, I put in this attribute called download. Click this one here. Oh, see if that does it for us. Let's See if it's downloading on my. Let me open this up in Google Chrome. Should go ahead and download it. Hopefully this isn't. Date here. Seems like it's not downloading it for me. Usually when you add the download attribute, it should go ahead and download it for us. Let's go ahead and just use their example really quick. Top of mind. Oh no, so this was not working. Okay, we can go back to this one here. Sometimes the HTML code gets a bit outdated and there's some security issues with this one. But essentially what should happen there with the download attribute should download it for us. Not sure why it's not doing it for us now. Let's see. We'll go back to that one in a bit. In general, though, if you're getting the href and DA, you should be okay. Let me actually see if I can put this after it, maybe. Still not doing it. Okay, we can go back to that one in a bit. Sorry, everyone. Now,
question: if I run and debug my HTML and VS Code, is it automatically saving it?
Oh, so are you saying like whenever you're running this debugger inside of here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it should. Let's see, where is it? It should go ahead and update your code if you're running through it. VS Code will automatically update it for you. It might save with different versions of it. That's more so when GitHub comes in. Is it? Are you running? Oh, start debugging. There we go. Let's see here. Let's actually test it out here. Oh, okay. Yeah, so if you're finding errors in your contact like this one in your debugger, you could
but
still.
It won't save my file if I run and debug. Do you know that? Or
Oh, it should. So any edits you make to your file after you're debugging, it's the same live file, so it'll be saved for you.
Okay.
So the same. I kind of did a lot there. If you didn't know what this one is, VS Code. Not all of us are using it. Some of us might be using Sublime, but a lot of editors, if you go to this run section, there's a start debugging portion that will kind of run through a debugger for you. Oh, that's right. Thank you. Let's see here. Let's just copy your code over here. So just change the names, is it? So let me grab up. So our target will be blank here. RE. So you add the relationship.
Add the REL and put a blank in the end.
Let me add this one. Target is equal to blank. All right, let's see if this guy works for us now. Let me do. I wonder if it's my like settings that's doing it. Let's see here.
Are you using Chrome or Internet Explorer?
I'm using Edge right now, so let me try it out with Chrome. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah, Edge 11 is not gonna work.
Yeah, that's the one thing. HTML sometimes doesn't allow us to work with older versions. So let's just do Chrome. Open with Chrome. It might be a setting on my end there. It's odd because it should let me download it. Yeah, it's not there. Okay, that's fine. Well, Joe, do you mind putting that in the main chat for everyone? In case other folks will try that one out. That's the bit of code.
You want me to swap the names or just put like that? It's like simple.
You can just put it like that. People understand. Okay. They could change the href to the PDF they're downloading.
All right.
So in general, though, Href should link us to that item that's there. So cool. So this is an area that I wanted to focus on a bit with this concept of absolutes and relatives. So if you're going to jump to a web page that's on the same web server as the current web page, you can use a relative URL for your value to href. Now, essentially, a relative URL is a path from the current directory to the destination of the web page, and current directory is where the current web pages reside. So again, if we take a look at our current directory, in our example, my current directory is inside of class stream, where I have these links and images. So that's my current directory. If I want to go ahead and jump to a different URL or HTML file, everything that's inside of this directory is relative to this file. So again, let's go ahead and just make an example here. I'm going to rename this page1.html, and I'll rename this one page2. These are going to be very basic pages that only have a heading 1 in each of them. Okay. Something like this. And let me open up this one. This is page 2. Great. So when I open up these ones, they should link me to it. And essentially what we would like to do is that we're going to assume that whenever we're linking to a URL, in this scenario, not a URL, but a HTML page, is going to be in the same directory. So to actually do this now, this is kind of our download example. If we say a href, and what is the href that I want to do? Well, again, we're assuming that we're in the relative directory where this guy is located. I'm going to say a href page1.html. Go to page 1. I'm going to say this is my A. Let me actually add 2 more break statements in here. And I'll do a target is equal to blank, just so that it looks a bit neater for us. Okay. Now we'll see here, and I click on this one, I have to go to page 1. Now the reason this is working is because we are assuming that the relative directory is in the same. You'll see here, if I put a slash in front of this link here, let's see what happens if I put a slash in front of it. You'll notice it will say your file couldn't be accessed, because right now I'm in a different directory than where I'm assumed it should go. And there's a few things here that we can work with. And what I want to showcase is like this / and these dots. So without the /, let's try to use a dot here. So there's 2 things we can do. Assuming that we're in the same directory, we could say page1.html. If you put a dot, what will happen is that it's going to kind of link us. The / will tell you to get started from where my current file is. So essentially, when you put / let me try to add a comment here. / is the equivalent of saying, look at the current folder my .html file is in. And now, which HTML file am I looking at? The links and images one. Okay, so it's a bit redundant. Let's see if this actually works for us. Okay, it's working again. So that's an idea of the saying, look at this current HTML file. Let's go ahead and get a bit more complicated with our code here.
Quick question.
Yeah.
How does that work for users? If the user doesn't have the code on the computer and they open the web and press one of the hyperlinks, what's going to happen?
Nice. So the URL, so essentially if we're working with users here, let me actually try and see. Let me pull up an example of this. So usually when you're working online with websites, you're in a web server, like on a domain web server. Let me log in here. I'll pull up one of them that I've been working with. Let's see here. Okay. Where is it? So essentially here, this is kind of a web server. Let me try to find HTML file. Look at here. This is a startup. Essentially, what will happen is that when all of these, based on the web server that you're using, will be converted into a URL that the user will click on, and essentially in the code here, see if I have I don't have that open, but essentially it would say all these are kind of directories, so it will be something like dot slash WP content. So in the actual code of a live web server, it would be kind of acting like all of these are on your desktop. And then what will happen is your domain server will access these. And when the user clicks on a link, it will kind of run through the HTML code that's here. But you can consider this like as a live server of your item there. So it's the same concept online. The user won't do something online or when you're actually making a website that's for the web live, you're not going to be doing something where it's like let's see here. You're not going to put the actual URL in your code. What this would actually be in your code is ./images/du, because right now it's linking your code to the web server there. So you can kind of expect it to be existing in a directory that's like hosted online. And the directory hosting it online is identical layout to our normal folder structure. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. And again, I'll look at, I'm using PHP on that, but I'll try to find a website I'm using HTML with, and I'll actually show like what the actual links are looking like, because it is useful to see it that way. Cool. So we have our, go to page 1 there, and what we could say next here, oh, I think I deleted something. Okay, so that's our /. To make this a bit more complicated with our directories, the other guy that was there, was the slash and the dots. And we could see here links with relative URLs. Let's go ahead and try to get into a few more layers here, just so that we can use them for our website. So I'm going to go ahead and call this layer or new pages. I'll call one directory this page. I'll call another one inside of here find page. What I'm going to make each of these guys, instead of this one being page 1, I'm going to rename this guy as page 3. The final page should be called page 4. Okay. And let me just edit this text here to be page 3. Final page is going to be page 4. Nice. Let me open up this guy one more time. So our page 1 is okay. Let me go ahead and in my main snippet of code, tell this to go into, and I'll do this 2 different ways. I'm going to leave this because especially when you don't have anything there, it's going to ask us, it's going to default it to be dots/. So again, it's just kind of this default version of it. Oops, daisy. Let me open this up in Google one more time. Okay. And now what I want to try to do is, after I did all this snippet of code, I want to go ahead and go to page 3. The issue now, though, is that my page 3 is inside of, let's see here, is instead of that next folder that I don't really have access to right now. So again, online, when you're working with these namespaces on the internet, what you're going to want to do is try to find the directory that it's in. So if I go ahead and just type out page3.html, this one will be page 4. We're going to get this error again because we'll see that I don't have access to it. So because we have a // automatically inside of it, we could say something like slash, and you'll see here when I do a slash. Oh, excuse me, the href that's here. What I could try to do essentially is understand that my links and images is in my current directory, and I know that my page 3 is inside of new pages. So what I need to do is assume, you know what? Go to the new pages folder. VS Code has a way of showing it as a folder. And then inside of this folder, you can either go to final page or page 3. To make this look like what a relative URL would look like online, you can do a // that will list out all the files in your current directory. So I have tree HTML files in one directory. Go to new pages, and then go to page tree. So now this is called a relative URL because it's relative to this HTML file that then I added. And now this is working out okay. Cool. Let's go ahead and do it for our final page 4 guy as well. /new pages / final page, page 4. Nice, page 4. So okay. Now this is easy because we're working with these directories that are there. What happens in my page 4? Why don't I add something like another href, and where I want this guy to go here is I want to have a backlink that allows me when I go on to page 4 to go back to the main page. So how do I actually go back to my original area there? We can use this concept of dot dot. So a dot dot goes up in the directory tree, so you can go backwards. So my href here, if I press out dot dot and then I put a /, you'll notice that it's actually taking me to the new pages subdirectory. And you'll see here I can have access to page tree. I'm going to go to final page. So when I say dot dot / final page, I'm actually still inside of here. But let's go ahead and put a slash. And then if I put another dot dot /, we'll notice that essentially what's happening is I'm inside a final page. I go back one more to go up to another level. Now I'm at the top level where I was originally. And what I can say now is I want to link back to my main page. So I have my dot dot up, go up one more, and now I'm at the end. So now in my page 4, if I go to it, I can click go back to main page. Now I'm back to my original guy there. What's another way to do this? We can use this concept of absolute URLs, where we go ahead and we give it the full directory tree that we're working with. And as I saw earlier, Joe, this is what we mean when we're working in a server or web server. You'll notice that we don't have like C users desktop. We have the server, the web server's base value, and then you can jump to this index HTML, which is where it's usually resided. But essentially, if you ever go to like www.youtube.com, that's actually linking you to like youtube/index.html. That's what the actual URL is. And we call it path absolute or root relative because essentially it's telling us right where it is. So if I want to do a root absolute path, this one, what I would need to do here is essentially do my /, let's see here. So I have a bunch of things. I have my users. Let me do users John Lynch, desktop, everything, Computer Systems Institute, Charleston AD110. Then I'll go into week 2 material, class 3. Oops. So if this is a lot at once, that's kind of why we use relatives sometimes. So you'll see here that this is my absolute path to get to my original guy. But again, we mean absolute to say like this is the URL that is going to be used, and either one of them is fine to work. So let's see if this guy works as well. Nice, it's working just the same. Now this is going to be issue on the example because my URL is going to be different from your guys' one. But you can see here that's kind of the difference between absolute and relative paths. Okay. Okay, does anyone have questions on pathing and everything like this? I know it's a bit weird because we're used to coding, but it's kind of its own monster in itself. But again, this is pretty general. Just go through the folders. It's the same layout. Okay. Good, cool. Nice. So again, there's this file we saw on my example web server and inside of this one, index.html. Index.html is essentially a web server's main contents that's there. So essentially, if you are looking at a website, index.html is going to be kind of where all it is saved. And index.html pages include links to other web pages on your website. And if it resides in your homepage directory, it is referred to as a home page. So essentially, if you have a main page or anything like that on your website, it'll be indexed HTML. And you'll notice when you take if you take some web SEO classes, index HTML is actually parsed by Google and Bing. They look for that HTML file specifically to see what your website's about. Okay. Nice. And again, we've already seen what the jumping is to the links, where you go ahead and you make an ID, and then you say href # that ID, and it will jump you to it. So you've seen some examples of that as well. There's a bit of code here that we'll just reference it as well. You'll see up here that this is my A linker. So this is my A element that links to pledge drive. What is pledge drive? Pledge drive is the ID of heading tree. And so essentially when you click on this pledge drive up here, it will jump you down to it there. Okay. We'll see here that in the clock tower example, this is where you click clock tower photograph, it will jump you down more. So if you click pledge drive, it will jump you down. This back to the top, essentially, Park University's clock tower must have an ID, maybe like top. And when you click back to top, it will say href top. And so it will jump you all the way back up there. Okay. This PowerPoint has the example of navigation with CSS and everything. But what I want to look at are these CSS for links as well. So we'll go a bit of styling in our example here. So I'm going to go ahead and go into our home page, essentially our links and images homepage. And in my style at the top, we can actually edit the A's right away. So if I do A, what you can see here now, very basically, as we're very familiar with by now, you can change all the text of the A per normal. Let's go back here. This one's fine. Let me do, let's do like a light color. Maybe like sky blue. I'm a bit picky with my colors. Light salmon or something. Okay, cool. So we have a nice little color there. And again, one thing that we could do though, is we can add these concepts of text decoration and this attribute of pseudo class selectors. So what these are, we've seen it before. There's some attributes that can occur specifically to so if you have a specific element in your HTML, like an A attribute, which is a link, you can go ahead and if you put a colon after it, you're going to have this scenario that arises. So you have something like hover, and what hover does is applies when the user designates an element with a pointer. Great. So good question, Joe. So essentially, yeah, you can use HTML. CSS isn't required. You can pretty much create a full website and actually style a website using HTML itself. But HTML is pretty bare bones, and the reason it's bare bones is that like you can't really do a hover thing with regular HTML. So you're not required to use CSS or even JavaScript. JavaScript's another one that's kind of added to make websites. You can pretty much use only HTML, but it's not as powerful as when you combined all three of them. So usually, if you're a web developer or you're doing web like freelance web work, what the three categories you need are essentially HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, because that's kind of what makes really nice looking websites. And I'll show you as like there's some really cool like websites out there, like what they do with them. Like you'll see up here that like this it's very small, but this being shadowed is CSS. And then if you go ahead and you click play here, all of this stuff is like that's JavaScript and CSS. We can see here, you'll see here in the back end, there's some sources and assets, but right here, all this code right here, where we have meta, all this code is JavaScript. We'll see in here we have some images as well, but it's pretty much all combined of them. Yeah, so if you only have like, and you'll see in our very first class, this is kind of why it looks awful. So in our very first class, yeah, so Wikipedia is like all HTML. if we go ahead and I open up my first example website, this is what HTML styling looks like. So if you ever see like the old school like skulls turning and stuff, like that's kind of what like HTML is like. You'll see here it's not that impressive comparison to what people could do with these. And there's some animations you could do with CSS that are actually with JavaScript are really cool. Like here's a cool one. This is all like CSS and JavaScript. Cool. Nice. And a cool thing too is that it works anywhere, so you can copy and paste it. Like you don't need to. I would give credit where credit is due, of course, but you don't need to like reinvent the wheel. You know. Nice. So there's also this text decoration on the hover. So text again, I won't tell everyone everything here, but essentially what you can do. Let me change this to wavy. You'll see here that when I like hover over this guy, my decoration would change. Let me try to change it to dotted. Looks like it's not doing too much to me. Let me add the text decoration of dotted into the regular A attribute. You'll see here that it kind of removes the underscore that's based on the regular A. So those are a few ways you could go around with that as well. Overline. You'll see here now that my links are on top of it. You could do another one where it's like in general. When you hover over it, it puts the link on top of it, something like that. So you can make some pretty unique animations on your page. I think on hover, yeah, so you can also transform text. Let me capitalize it for us here. So now you'll see here that when I have my hover, I actually have this link pop out almost. So and then you can also like modify how large that transform is as well. And then a cool thing, let's see if we can do more with that. But again, you can kind of style it like that. Okay. Nice. So again, we'll see here. We've already kind of done this, but linking to other web pages with the href, you need to understand where you are inside of the category. And these targets, I feel we're pretty comfortable with targets, so I won't go through all of them again. A target self or parent is kind of redundant. Self means that you're going to replace yourself, overlay the current web page with the target web page, and then the parent opens the target web page and the current web page is parent document. So which is typically the browser window. So these two are pretty similar. Blank again is this new tab. So if you want like a website where the user gets, if you don't want the users to get annoyed with you replacing where they are on your website, use blank. But for some scenarios, when you click on a link and you're like, contact us, they're going to assume that it's going to bring them into a contact page. So that's fine. But if you're doing something like for extra resources, click here, you should assume that should take you to a new tab so that they know where they are. Okay. Cool. So we're going to look at here are these three different images. And the main thing that I'm not going to talk about, like why they're called like that. So again, like it's kind of interesting for to take a look at them. But again, we have, this is funny here though. GIF, or I hear people say GIF as well. I call it GIF. You can call it whatever you'd like. GIFs are usually the animated cycles of things. So if you have like a spinning wheel, that's like a GIF. JPEG is a reduced version of PNG. So a PNG has a lot more clarity on it. But again, JPEG is usually what we use for websites because people might have different loading speeds, and a JPEG is better to use. But if you have like a really nice image of like a header page, maybe you use a PNG. Okay. We'll also notice the cool thing about PNGs is that they have transparent backgrounds. So if you want something that can showcase your background on your website, you'll want to use a PNG. Nice. So why are we using all of these? Well, let's go ahead and get an example of each of these. I'm going to go ahead and put these three of these different ones into our chat for ourselves. Okay. Let me get some. Cool. So I'll say each of these. So what I'm going to do really quick is, let's just say I'm making a space themed website. I'm going to grab, see here, and I'll use the differences here. I'm going to put these in chat for us. One of these is going to be a GIF. So I'll put a space GIF in there. I'm going to do all of them the same name, just so that I could showcase how it's different there. There's going to be JPEG. Let me just use our planet then. So where we are right now. So I'll put this guy in there. Let me call him space as well. So there's going to be two different files called space, but you'll notice that the back end of it is a bit different each time. And one more trick for Google Chrome, because I'm assuming we're all on Google Chrome. If you aren't, this is similar to Mozilla. When you get a PNG, you're going to assume that the background doesn't have, this is like a transparent background that we have, but sometimes it might not be transparent. If this is happening to you, what you can do is you go to tools, color, and in color, instead of doing any color, black and white, you do transparent. And now all of your images are going to be transparent images, okay? Let me grab this one. This one is like our Milky Way. And I'll call this final guy, oh, well, he should be a GIF, I'm not sure why, or a PNG. If you're getting issues with the type of the image as well, you can do image type PNG. Let's try to see if this one works. There we go. I'll call this final one space as well. Nice. So right now in my main web page, I have 3 different images. They're all called space, but you'll notice that the type of them are all different. Okay. So now what we can do here is look a bit at this image. Images are pretty straightforward that we can work with. And I'll actually make a div with these images to showcase differences with them. There's one more format that we won't showcase right now, but if you'd like to, it's called SVG. And SVGs are really nice for cutouts and logos. So an SVG is really useful for, like, if you have a check mark on your website, or if you just want a general check mark. There's a bunch of websites online that can work with it as well. Let's see here. That one converts it to it, but oh yeah, we're already here. But again, this is nice for just like plain like images there. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually take a look at these 3 different images, and now we can make them work in our main thing. And what I'll do here is I also want to apply some styling to them as well. So in general, I can image, and an image is a void one because it doesn't have an end goal there. And what we could say here is the source of my image. Let me go ahead and put my / so that I'm at my relative path again. We'll see here that I now have access to each of these guys inside of here. So let's do the GIF first, because the GIF looked pretty cool. And this guy, oops, close him off. We'll see here now that I actually have my my GIF of space inside of my website here. Okay, let's put this to the side, and I'm actually gonna put each of these into a div, like so. And now again, I have my relative path of it, and let me just add 2 more break lines so that it's not on top of everything. What I can do next here is add in another image. The source of this guy is going to be maybe the JPEG one. And then I'll finally do my last one. Source. Okay, / space .png or something, okay? Great. We'll notice that these are all, oh, it didn't cut out my background here. That's fine for the time being. We'll notice that I can't really figure out the backgrounds here. So what we could do here is that if you have a div, we can do a class inside of my div. I'll call it space images for the time being. Good practice to have an underscore between them, but you can call them whatever you'd like. what I could say here now is that if I have a space images, I could do something like for every image inside of here. Oops. So my class is space images. I'm assuming that the user that they're all going to be images, but to be safe, what I'm going to do is say, okay, for every image that belongs to the class of space images, why don't you give it a width of like 250 pixels and a height of 300 pixels? Let's see what happens if I do it this way. Oops. Oh, this guy's not changing for us. Let's go ahead and try to see why the styling isn't being applied to these guys.
Can I make a question?
Yeah.
Can you go back to the page?
Sure. Yeah. This one here.
Sure. So in that case, you put the second image. It's of course it's huge. There's
Yeah.
any way on code that it can like limit the size of the web page so it will not extend to the sides?
Nice. So let's see here. So like to remove the scrollable one. There is let me see here. I think it's special one. What we could do manually here. This one isn't, the class isn't working for me right now. Let's just do it manually here. One approach you could do is of course if you add like a style element, you could change the width. Let's do it this way. Okay. So now it's really small because I forced it to be smaller. But let's just see. I believe it's called responsive. Let's see here. I believe there's a way we could force it. Let's see. I believe it's called max width. So if I do something, instead of doing the, let me call this just the image class. So I'm going to replace each of my images. Oh, I guess because each of these didn't belong to the. Do it this way. Okay, I actually think, did that do it? No, it's not doing it. Let me just replace it with image. Sorry, Joe. Let me, okay, so now they're all small. One thing that we could do as well, though, is that if you're not comfortable with using that scenario where you force the width, what you could do is do this thing called max width, and let's try to put it at 100%. You'll see here now, my style is still, let me remove the styling. You'll see now, do you see how I don't have the scrolling thing anymore? It's kind of gone, and this guy's no longer massive. And if I actually scroll this guy out, he's actually responsive to the size of my web page now. Okay? So the code that will fix that for you is the max width. You could also do the max height. And when I say 100%, what 100% says, essentially, max height doesn't do a good job showing it, but essentially says go ahead and make sure that it fits to that one. Now, what we could do here is that if you don't want it to be as large, you change this to maybe 50%. Let's actually just work with width instead of height. Now you'll see here that this is smaller, but when I drag it, it's always going to take up 50% of the screen that I'm currently on. And I'll add one more thing here. I can make my height to auto and my width to auto. That kind of does the same thing as these ones, but essentially this is always going to take up. The height is going to be different for each of these because the height variable is set to be its own thing, but the width is always going to be 50%. Okay. Does that help with that
Yeah.
question? Cool.
Yes. Thank you.
So the
So
hardest.
right now you have all images set to 50% of the page, right?
The page's width, yeah. 50% of the page's width. And height and auto, you'll see here what happens.
If you comment the max width and leave the rest that you had.
See here? Get rid of this guy here.
Yeah.
Oops. Let me just delete him. So you'll see here now that my height and width are at auto. And what auto means is that if I have no other scenario or given thing, it's going to say, you know what, I'm going to auto to the size of the original image. And the
It's
size
native,
of it,
right?
yeah, so it's massive. And the original image's size, let me actually open this up here. This JPEG has, I think the resolution is like 1980 by 10 something, so it's massive in comparison to these ones. But now if you force it, you know what? Give me the max width of 50% of my screen. The height and width are going to, I'm going to automatically be set to whatever fits the 50%. And now that's 50% of the screen looks
Oh,
like.
so in that case, if you comment just the height and width, that means that it's going to be
So height and width at auto are going to be the same size as they're given, but you could also do something like this where you force it to be a certain height and width too, right?
right. What I was thinking, like, how can we adjust them to be the same size?
So for all of them to be the same size on the page.
Yeah,
So-
and after that they adapt to whatever changes I do.
So
So
I would say,
that's how.
yeah, I would say put them all at 50%, and if you want, what you could do now, let's see what happens if we make these percentages as well. We'll see here that my height is going to be different each time. The width might be kind of similar.
Hmm.
Let's go ahead and put the height to be 350 pixels. So now we actually have, it looks a bit, let me make that like 150. Okay. So my width at 25% still stretches it. Okay. So now, if you essentially someone get that type of thing where they're the same size, you might want to use a max width, and you're probably going to do a combination where the height is going to be the same, but the width is going to kind of be a bit different. And you'll see here though that they're all kind of expanding and contracting at the same type of level.
Okay, so if you, instead of using max width, if you use max height, is that such a thing?
Yeah, max height.
Or 50% and then do height and width auto, for example. That's going to make them be the same size as the 50% before, or?
Yep. So now what
No,
actually
they're back to
happens
the original.
here
Oh, I see.
goes
Because
back to
there's
the
not a
original.
limit on height, right?
Yeah, so your height is pretty much not, your page isn't going to be responsive to height as it is with width. So width is usually what you're going to want to use with these guys
Gotcha.
to be more responsive. Height can work sometimes, but if you look at CSS examples online, it's always working with width. It's like the width of the image and stuff.
Okay.
Cool.
And that's gonna, and the width is gonna be dictated by the resolution of the screen, pretty much.
Absolutely, yeah. It's going to be dictated by resolution of screen and the browser's current thing that it has. See here?
All right.
So if, and you could see here if I scroll, the responsive.
I meant resolution of the screen, but I meant like the size of the window that you have that your browser opened.
Yeah, exactly.
If contractors ask you, for example, to put different sizes for each image, what should you do? Create IDs for the image and work with which one in style?
Great question. So there's actually a few different ways you could do this. What you used to have to do before we had this more responsive thing is like have 4 or 5 different images for each size. But you could see here, if I actually go ahead and say inspect my phone and let me go to like an iPhone, when you do width auto and height auto, essentially it will automatically assume that you're going to be working with these different sizes, and the images are going to be responsive for each of them. So if you're working with like, so that you get a job like, okay, I need to have this website for PC, iPhone 11, and Android like Stylo 5 or whatever, the ways that you can do that is using CSS. And this is where CSS gets a lot handier than HTML, and this concept of responsive images. So essentially, again, responsive images are going to be based on the browser size. Kind of shift the sizes, and we can actually go ahead. There's actually, you can get very specific with it. There's different items here of this set called sizes. And sizes, again, oops, let me jump out here, is going to have a different size based on each source that you provide. So what we could try to do here is, let me Let me make one more set. I'm gonna make these kind of smaller for here so they don't take up the full screen. Okay. And I'll set one more item down here. Here. Cool. And now what we'll do here is usually when we're using image, we use source. Let me actually remove each of these guys here. What we can also use here is image, source, and set. And a source set is going to be a list of one or more strings separated by commas, indicating a possible image source for the user. So what this means essentially is that based on the size you're working with in your image, you can use a different image source, and we can kind of make this. Let's see if we can get an example of this guy. So what I'll do here is I'm gonna put in. Let me make 2 more images inside of my. I'm gonna call this space GIF like space small just for the time being, and let's make this other image one space large. Okay, so I have a space small GIF, space large like JPEG. What I'll do here is in my source set, I'm going to go ahead and just reference them. See here. Let's see here. JPEG, like here. And now I have this source set that's there. And again, what we could say here after this guy, this one's a little bit more complicated of what's going on. So usually I would say you can use the auto and the responsive. But after I go ahead and I provide my source set, let's see here. I can also go ahead and provide the width that they're going to be at, or like what version I want them here. So let me do like 520 width, and this one will be. Let's try something like this. And then my sizes here is going to correlate to the specific sizes for each of these guys. So essentially, I want my GIF to be at the size. Let's say of 20 pixels. Oh, let me actually. Sorry, we actually don't need those up there. My bad. 20 pixels. So I have my 2 sources I'm going to use. And then if I put a comma, it's going to reference to the other one. Let me just make it. I think I called that one 20 pixels. Okay. You'll see here that it's getting a bit large scale, but essentially this max width is going to reference to this space small GIF. The space large.jpg is going to be referenced to this one. Let's actually see if anything changes in our code just yet. And you'll see here that I have this image pop up, okay, of this space GIF. And let me try to get the source image down. So it might not change the type of image here. Let me say small by gift. Okay. Now, this might not be what we wanted to do, where it actually changes the image when we make it larger. But essentially, you can see here that when we, these 2 guys are kind of frame with each other. But essentially, what this source set does draw for us is say, you know what, when, let me say, min width 820. Let me reduce those. See if this guy does it. No, so he's not changing. Essentially, what's happening is that what you would like to do if you need to provide multiple images, especially for a website to load faster, is you would provide a source set like this. And what you would do is, instead of doing 2 different ones like I would do, is something like this. where you would have one version of it at 820 pixels. You would have another version of it at 420 pixels, and then you would have the specific sizes that are required. Oh, that says 500 pixels there, 5,000. You would have the different images required for them to work there. Now, this guy isn't working, of course, because I placed thing there. Okay. But again, this source set is going to contain sources of images that is going to be referenced there. I'm not sure why my other one isn't popping up for us, though. See here. This is one way to essentially do that.
What you're saying basically is you're going to have only one image that is going to be showing if you zoom in or zoom out.
Yeah.
And then once you zoom in, then the larger picture is going to pop in.
Yeah. So essentially, and the reason that we do it this way, for right now, these three are good with the responsive. But if you have if you're looking at a very small image, it doesn't need to be a massive 2 megabyte image. It could be a very small version of it. So what the source set does is provide you the opportunity to use multiple versions of the same image at smaller sizes to save space and stuff. That's all that's doing for us. Right now, my JPEG and GIF aren't going to be working with me here because usually you don't do it to replace images. You do it to save on the space. Now, that's kind of with source set, but what I would say for the time being, let me actually link you. Let's see here. For everyone too, there's a guide here because source set's a little convoluted. Let's see here. So I'll link us to this one here. So that's kind of what image source set is. Again, we use it sometimes. Responsive kind of changes it for us as well. Responsive is a good alternative to it. The one last thing too, though, that I want to show off with the images is, of course, because these are elements, you could say here as well is image hover, and we could say something like let me do image hover opacity 50%. And what this will do for me is that when I hover on an image, it now goes ahead and highlights it.
Can we do is that a way that you can make it zoom, make it bigger when you hover over it, like Amazon does with their pictures?
Yeah, let's see if we can get the let's see here. I believe on hover, I think it's called transform. Transform, two-dimensional transformation is applied to an element. And let's say, I think it's called scale.
Like to 50 to 25% to 100%, something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So there you go. So now it makes. Let me go ahead and make this bigger. So I'm going to scale it to 2. Let's see what happens when I scale it to 2. Oh, there you go. So let me do
Nice.
1.1. There you go. So now you kind of have these images popping out at you, and the opacity is changed.
That's
Of
awesome.
course, it's kind of shifting over to my edge there, but you can kind of get the idea there. Cool. So again, you can make really unique styles with this one.
On HTML, there's no way to how can I say that? To redirect the, for example, you asking to scale 1.1, so the image is going to increase basically 10% when hover, right? There's any way to the image you're gonna generate when you put the cursor on the top of the image to show up in a different place on the screen?
Oh, so have a div show or something based on a hover? Yeah.
Yeah. For example, Amazon, it doesn't put to show up exactly on the top of the image. They put a little bit to the side, a couple pixels to the side, so it doesn't.
So let's see if we can. Let's see here. Believe we can. There's a lot of Let's see here. I think what you could do is on the hover. Is it image top? I think you could say the top of your image. Let me do negative. If I use right, do right negative 15 pixels. See what happens here. So that doesn't do. Let me do a very small. Okay, so it's very small that's going out. I think if we do our position, let me see If I make our position, so again, position is this thing where you have to edit the position if you want to make it move there. If we make it relative, oh, there you go. So now when I hover over it, what will apply is it's going to say change the position of my image to be relative to my browser screen. Move it to the right as 15 pixels. If I do it like as 150 pixels, now we'll see here that the issue is though is that now, well, I'm hovering over it now. My image has this entire div that's held up. Okay, so you can move it kind of like that, so you can get kind of creative. Another thing that you could do as well is that you can, yeah.
Maybe I don't know if it's possible. I'm just thinking. Maybe on the image on the image hover inside the hover, you can put like to, I don't know, put like a href again to the same image and reduce the opacity.
Oh, so like when you hover the image to go to a new tab or something like that, to open a new tab.
No. Can you scroll down the code a little bit?
Sure.
On the image part. Okay, I see. You can put an image source on the styling for the same image you're gonna hover.
Sure. So I do like a style.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but yeah, you can do it here. Sure. You're gonna put the
style on hover. Are you saying?
yes,
Like,
exactly.
oh, okay, yeah. Let's see here.
And then you can put to the hover image show up on the side, you know, with 50% opacity.
Yeah.
And the original image is gonna be in the original place.
Sure. So what we could do here, let me show you. I think. Let's see here. Let's try to. I think I know what you're saying here. So how about I keep these guys the same. So what you could do in this scenario, there's a lot you could do with it. It's pretty powerful. But let's just say that on the hover of this specific image, space.png, I'm gonna have a GIF pop up that's beneath somewhere that has like a opacity of a small amount. Let me change it here. So this guy is still moving with my opacity. Let me actually remove some of these. I'll just transform his scale 1.2. I'm not going to move him to the right. So when I hover over this guy, what I would like to do is this space image to pop up like down there or something with more. So the way that you could do that is you can actually apply an ID to this image. I'm going to call it space GIF as my ID. And up here, what I'm going to do is go ahead and grab that ID and put that displayed to none. And now displayed none is specifically built for these scenarios. Sorry, it's hidden. Let's see here. Should be, oh, that's because I'm not providing it the correct ID. So space GIF, you'll notice here that my space GIF is hidden when I start this up. What I can do next though, is when I hover on it, let me see here. Let's see if I could do it this way. I think there's something. Oh, there we go. What I could do next here. Oops. He's not being shown. So what we could try now is that when I do image hover, so when I hover over image and I have this space GIF applied to it, see if I can do it this way. Maybe block. This one's not working for me. Let me try it this way. You know what? I think what we might be getting ahead of ourselves here. I'm wondering if we could do this with CSS, but this is where JavaScript comes into play. Show them hover.
So that's basically how web developer work, right?
Yeah, that's
someone asks something, you have no, and you need to figure it out.
This is why we'll need the JavaScript. But let me see if I can get. So if I hover over my image and I apply space, maybe I can do it this way. Block. Shoot, it should be. So essentially, what we could do with JavaScript here essentially is when we get a hover to the code, we would do something where it's like run JS show, and what JS show would do is be a snippet of JavaScript code that in your backend of your website would run a CSS script that essentially says change display of space GIF from none to lock. And then that would be showing up. Okay. There's another thing here, though. Let's see if I could do it this way. This is from an example. I think our images might be confusing us, though, with the ID. Let's show an example of mine. We could see here some Stack Overflow. You can get a similar effect. So what this snippet code is doing is that it's a div class of hover me, div class of show me, and you'll see up here that all the show me class is hidden. And then when we say show me hover, oh, excuse me, show him of hover dot show me, it's going to change the display block to this one here. Oh, Pooh, no, we kind of got into this specific scenario. It's not required. Let me actually see here.